Omaha did a great job, and we enjoyed our time there. But like I said, this is just, a little bigger, a little grander, and this whole outdoor-indoor environment around the area and everything is all about swimming.
Where else can you compete for a spot on the U.S. Olympic swim team?
Talk about WrestleMania moments.
Watch professional wrestling's crown jewels. And
we're here to tip off NBA All-Star 2024.
The answer, Indianapolis, Indiana. One of the key players in bringing these big events here, Indiana Sports Corporation President Patrick Talty. He's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Indianapolis continues to flex its muscle for big sporting events, hosting the best basketball players on the planet in February for NBA All-Star Weekend. Built the biggest indoor swimming pool inside Lucas Oil Stadium for the U.S. Olympic team trials. And now stepping into the ring to showcase pro wrestling's premier events. The Indiana Sports Corporation plays captain, if you will, in bringing these global events to Indy. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome to the podcast this week a very busy man, Patrick Talty, the president of the Indiana Sports Corporation. And Patrick, thanks for joining me on the podcast. How are you? Are you rested up? You've had a busy first half of the year. I know the second half is busy too. Are you rested up?
I am. I'm excited. I mean, we just had a staff meeting this morning. We were talking about how juiced and charged we were to tackle the next 6 months.
Well, 2024 was promised to be a really big year for sports in Indy, a huge sports town in and of itself, and it certainly has not disappointed. NBA All-Star Game, NFL Combine, there was some NCAA March Madness, men's and women's NIT. Let's start, though, with the Olympic trials, the swim trials. Hard to describe the effort that went into that and how that's been received. First of all, we'll start at the end. Talk about the reaction, the pools inside Lucas Oil Stadium, the entire setup, the Eiffel Tower downtown. What kind of feedback and reaction did you get from USA Swimming on down?
Oh, no, thank you for asking about this. Obviously, this has been an event that we've been thinking about for a long time, and the reaction's been unbelievable. We've gotten all kinds of feedback from athletes and coaches and administrators and USOPC, administrators. I mean, everyone loved what we had done. I was blown away by how much this really captured the community's emotions and how people talked about it and how people came down. I mean, Indy showed up. Every session was huge. I mean, we were setting, the world record was about 16,000 in Rio, and we broke that record in a prelims. I mean, we did 17,000 for prelims, and which has never been the case. And so to have two world records set, 20,000 on the opening night and then 22,000 on Wednesday, that just was unbelievable. And I think the best way to encapsulate it was there was an email that was shared with me that someone said the sport of swimming will always be referred to as pre-Indy 24 and post-Indy 24 and how it's changed the sport forever.
Wow, that is powerful. How did this whole idea kind of this seed get planted? I mean, this is pretty audacious, pretty bold proposal to go in and say, hey, we're gonna put these pools inside an NFL stadium for the first time ever. How'd the idea come about and how to kind of play out?
Yeah, USA Swimming had been selling out in Omaha very quickly and wasn't very, there's only about 10,000 people that could really see the event. And so it limited who could experience the Olympic movement and experience swimming. And so swimming had been talking about how do they take it to the next level? How do they grow their sport? And Scott Davison from the president and CEO of One America had the idea. He's a swimming nut, swimming fan. And, they working with swimming, he said to swimming, hey, what about putting inside Lucas Oil Stadium? And Ryan Vaughn, my predecessor, and Scott had talked about it at different times about why not think about it in its biggest form. And, and that's what we did when we put the bid together. We put this bid together during COVID. So in
Wow.
June of 2020, we were putting a bid together in our offices, 6 feet apart, masked up, putting a package together to think, what would the trials look like in Indy? And we were, think about what that was like in June of 2020. We were trying to imagine what Indy would look like and what these trials would look like when we weren't hosting any events. And so it was a really important event for us. So we went all in and said, hey, why not put it on the grandest stage of all and put it inside Lucas Oil Stadium? And if there was, and this is the perfect venue for it because we've hosted regional basketball, we've hosted the Final Four, and the building is built for multi-purpose. It's built to do different things. And then when you throw in that the 1924 Olympic swimming trials was held at Broad Ripple Park, and so 100 years later, the team is going to be named to go to Paris again. I mean, that's like a storyline that you can't make up. So It was perfect.
What was the initial reaction, that very first reaction from USA Swimming when you threw this idea, this proposal at them?
I think they had gotten proposals also from Minneapolis and St. Louis and Omaha. And I think the piece that was the reaction that really piqued their interest is when we said we were going to do more than just a swim meet. And we were going to do other things in the city. And we said, hey, we're going to turn all of Indianapolis into the swimming mecca and make it all about swimming sport and about the celebration of Paris Games. And I think that was the piece that really was like, oh, wow, this is going to be different. And I think even up until the very end, I'm not sure that they completely were able to grasp the Indy way. We kept telling them, just hold on, be ready, because the Indy way is coming and you're going to be blown away by what's going to happen. And we showed up. I mean, you think about everything that happened at the airport, and the Eiffel Tower and Georgia Street and the Legacy Project, all those things that we did to make it feel like a bigger than just a swim meet. And I'll never forget, Matt Biondi said, I arrived at the airport for the first time in my life. I knew where the swim meet was.
Wow. Yeah. What is it about Indy? You say the Indy way. It continues to amaze me how Indy takes an event and figures out a way to make it special and make it unique and make it community-wide in many cases. As you said, it's just a special sauce. There's something special about something in the water here, I think, that helps make that kind of thing happen.
Yeah, I started my career here in Indianapolis, and then I moved around the country and the world and hosted events in other places. And I thought when I left, everyone does it like Indy does. And then I realized very quickly that no one does it like Indy does. And there is something special here. And I tell people all the time that I think our special sauce is our ability to come together and put on these big events and work together no matter where we come from, what side of the aisle, all that. We just come together as a community. And that right there is what makes us unique in terms of, hey, we want to accomplish something. We're going to go out and we're going to do it. We're going to do it together. And everyone works towards that same goal. There isn't, divergent paths as we go through these planning. And it's that community focus of working together to achieve these that allows us to achieve the great things and allows us to take an event and go to the next level. Without that community belief in themselves and the community belief that we're going to do it together, it wouldn't happen like it does.
The international impact of sporting events was certainly felt, Patrick, with the NBA All-Star Weekend. Talk about that. You had to deal with the city had to deal with some less than ideal weather and some conditions there, but again, the All-Star Weekend was another big success for Indianapolis and put it again really on an international stage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the unique thing about that event is it is truly a global event and it's shown on a global stage. And we haven't had that opportunity to really highlight ourselves on that global stage in quite a while. And so when you think about that event, and people would say, oh, the basketball game is not that great of a basketball game. But what's amazing is everything that happens around the weekend. It's the celebration. It's the convergence of culture and fashion and basketball and and the world is watching. And so we were able to do that. And we didn't have, it snowed, but we still had Georgia Street going. People were still out there celebrating basketball. They were shooting baskets. They were playing 3-on-3. We had DJs out on the street. And the kickoff that happened on Thursday night, no city has ever done that before. And so once again, that's Indy taking it to the next level and doing it differently and doing it uniquely and raising the bar for the next cities that have to host it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about a couple of events, the future of a couple of events. So one, the NFL Combine that Indianapolis has literally created, into what it is today over the years. The NFL has expressed an interest in perhaps moving it around. What's the status? I think, is it another year or 2 years in Indy, and then we'll see what happens? What's the status of the Combine?
Yeah, we have it for next year. We work with Visit Indy. Visit Indy takes the lead on the bid on this one, but we work very closely with them and helping create those fan moments because that's really the focus now is how do you create the Combine into another fan event and another opportunity for the fans to interact with the NFL brand. And I think Indy's done a great job of that. You look at last year, this used to be an event that when I first worked here, I worked at the convention center and the RCA Dome. They wanted no one to really know that the Combine was going on. It was don't tell anyone, be quiet. We don't want people to know about it. And now we've gone to where we are advertising it, we are marketing it. We want people to show up. We want them to have a good time. There's a fan fest that happens out on South Street now. It is a total change, and Indy's done that. Indy has taken what their wishes have been in terms of making this a fan event, and we've delivered, and I think we keep delivering on that. So I think the future is bright for us. I think we have an opportunity. Definitely have it for the next year, and then I think we have opportunities for future years. But you know what? We're also focused on the draft too. Like that's a property that I think it would be perfect in Indy. You see the success in Detroit for the draft, and I think we would, be in the same breadth of Nashville and Detroit when you think about how people can get here and the success of that. So I think we've got a lot of NFL events in front of us, and I think we're in a great position because we've hosted that draft. We've hosted the Combine flawlessly for years. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the draft because I think that, again, an event that Indy would really knock out of the park. And it has quickly become such a fan, like everything the NFL does, it seems, has become just a big fan, a big event. What's the status? I know there's interest here, and I think a bid has been submitted, right?
Well, they've asked for letter of interest for certain years, and we're focused on 27, working on that. And then once they get those letter of interest in, then they'll start to ask for formal bids.
For bids, yeah.
We have been sending people to the drafts up in the different locations. We've been in Cleveland, we've been out to Vegas, we've been, and we've seen it. We've seen what they're doing, what the other cities are doing, and we envision what that will look like in Indy and what we could do, put the Indy spin on it. So we are preparing to be able to put our best foot forward. But once that bid comes out, we're going to be, full throttle forward on trying to bid on that event.
Yeah, another event or events, I guess I should say that Indy, in my personal opinion, does better than anyone else, Big Ten basketball and football. Of course, it's not been anywhere else but Indy for football. I think you're waiting on word, right, from the Big Ten in terms of the future of basketball, Big Ten basketball and football. Where does that stand?
Yeah, correct. We're waiting to hear from the Big Ten we put bids in for future years. It was 25 through 28 for both football and basketball. And we obviously had put in 4 years of football. As you said, it's only ever been here. We think this is the perfect location for it. We think we do it better than anybody else. We're the only ones that have ever done it. And so we're feeling really confident about football that we're going to be able to retain at least some of that, if not all of the games. We'd love to retain all the games. Other cities are now interested in that game. You think about Las Vegas and other places like that now that they have a footprint in the West Coast, they can look at other places. So we're really interested in that one. We've worked hard for that, and of course, Big Ten basketball. I think it does well here. I went up to Minneapolis and we visit. We send teams up to watch the women's. I went up to see the men's. And we've gone other places, to Chicago when it's been hosted there, and DC and other places, just to see how other cities are doing it, so we can always make sure that we're staying at the very top. And so we bid on 2 years of that, both men's and women's, and I'm feeling cautiously optimistic that we'll at least get one of those.
Yeah.
If I would love to get 2 out of the 4, that would be a huge win for Indy. But I think we do well, and I think the fans show up. We're centrally located, and we always do really well. And of course, the execution side of things, the community and our team between Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Lucas Oil Stadium, and us, I mean, they execute flawlessly. And so that's not the issue. It's really boiling down to, what other communities do they have a priority for, and how do we show them that coming to Indy achieves their goals, and keeps the Big Ten the premier conference that it is.
Talk about that, conference realignment, which is, the landscape and so many aspects of college sports changed dramatic on multiple levels. But having that expanded now, Big Ten, which is literally coast to coast, now from a competitive standpoint, your business is very competitive and has been for a long time. But now with these added cities, these added venues, and the interest, it kind of adds to it greatly, right? From a competitive standpoint.
It absolutely does. I mean, one, we would never talk about Vegas in terms of a sports city. 10 years ago, we never talked about that. Now, Vegas is going after the Big Ten, basketball and football, and they have the F1 race, and they have the Mountain West Conference has played their championship game out there, and Pac-12 has played their championship game out there, and they now have a hockey team. They now have a football team. They're talking about, there's a baseball team that's coming out there. So they are competition, and they are going after events hard. And so it is very difficult from a competition standpoint. Nashville is building a new stadium.
Yeah.
And while they're not out west, they are, that is another city that's going to be competing hard against us. And they have said publicly that they want to go after events that Indy owns and Indy has had, and they want to host it there. Then you throw into the mix SoFi Stadium, and you throw in on the arena side, when you start talking about basketball, you've got Climate Pledge Arena, you've got Ballmer's new building, the Intuit Dome out in LA, you've got not Staples, but Crypto Arena now, and you have other places like that, and T-Mobile, all those venues. I mean, I still think that we have the best basketball venue in the country.
Yeah.
But when you think about everything else that's been built up in the Little Caesars Arena up in Detroit, and you've got the one out in, where the Milwaukee Bucks play, all those new buildings are going after these events. And so the competition's just gotten harder and harder. And shoot, the last Big Ten football championship, Minneapolis was here, Green Bay was here, Detroit was here. I mean, so all these cities are here, they're watching, and they're trying to learn, and they're trying to figure out how it fits in their communities, and then get into the game and take those events.
Yeah. Wow. Well, talking about big events, again, this has been a big year for Indy hosting events and also announcing events for the future. WWE, right? We just had that announcement not long ago, and what an announcement it was. The 3 marquee events for WWE coming to Indianapolis. Talk about the effort to get that here and how huge that those events will be for Indy.
I think those events are massive for Indy. I think that, one, the fans know, people who are fans know how big it is. And the people who aren't necessarily fans or follow it closely, when they see how the WWE universe shows up, they will be blown away, and they'll realize that it's great business. And when you talk about over $300 million of economic impact for those 3 events, I mean, that is huge for our tourism industry. And those are stretched over, an 8-year partnership, which the WWE has never done that. They've never packaged.
I wondered about that. Yeah. Have they ever done all 3 across several years?
And this is the first time ever that they've looked to do a partnership like this. And quite frankly, it started by a conversation that we were working to bring the Royal Rumble here. And that's the first event that we've announced in 2025. We talked about that. And as we started talking more and more to the WWE, and I was talking to their president, Nick Khan, who is a unbelievably smart businessman, knows the media industry so well, and a very respected gentleman. And, we started talking, and we said, hey, instead of bidding on these things every, couple of years, why don't we package them and put them into one and come together with a partnership that puts the three events in, because now that gives me stability and I don't have to bid on these, each year against other cities, and it gives them stability and where they're going to go. And then it also allows them to have a footprint in a community that they haven't had before, and think about a legacy project and doing other events in the community and making it all kind of put together, which then I think, for their business opens them up to different partnerships and different sponsorships, and it opens them up to, different avenues of people thinking about them differently. And quite frankly, the WWE right now, that ticket is the hottest ticket going. I mean, they are firing on all cylinders. I used to work there, and
that's what I was going to ask you about that. I think Indy had a leg up here because you were talk about your role, your executive role there with WWE.
Yeah, I was responsible. I was the senior vice president of live events. So I was responsible for placing our events across the country, where they would go, and then negotiating those deals. And then the other half of the division was responsible for actually selling the tickets to all those events. So they would market it and, place all the TV ads and all that kind of stuff. So was there for 3 years, traveled the world, was responsible for the global and domestic touring for the live events. And it was a energizing place to work. It was so much fun. We did some amazing things. It's one of the most creative places I've worked. And it did help that I knew the inner workings of WWE and some of the executives that were there. And when we started talking about drivers of a business deal, I could, when Nick and I and Chris Legento, their EVP, him and I started talking about different things. I'd say what I needed from our standpoint to be drivers. I could understand what their drivers were. And then we were able to put a deal together that made sense for both of us, partly because I understood what when they were saying stuff, what that meant and what it was about and that kind of stuff. And I learned so much when I worked there in terms of how to look at problems, how to look at them differently. It's a publicly traded company. So I now understand about, shareholder reports and, every quarter you're looking at things. And so it was a really cool time and a lot of fun. And, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Much more ahead with Patrick Talty, the president of the Indiana Sports Corporation, his path to Indy, what might be next, and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Patrick Talty, the president of the Indiana Sports Corporation, the very first local sports corporation, local sports entity in the United States. And today, Patrick, you're not alone, right? That landscape has changed dramatically. So Indy was really a trailblazer. Do you know how many local, regional, state groups there are now?
Yeah, there's over 350 of them that have been created since the inception of us in 1979 when we were the first. We built the industry, and now the industry has just exploded, and all communities see the value of sport and see the value of the sports business and how they can harness that for the benefit of their community.
Yeah, what got you into the sports game, if you will, on this path? Was it a certain moment or something you always had an interest in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm an accountant by graduation. I was sitting in my class my senior year. It was probably about February. And, I had a tentative job offer up in Northern Virginia, where I was from, to go back and work in an accounting firm. And I realized looking around class one day that I'm not sure I wanted to do this the rest of my life. And I wasn't sure that it excited me. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. And so I went to grad school and I was working in the intramural sports program there at Virginia Tech. And my boss at the time said, "Hey, why don't you come to this conference and you can get a graduate assistantship and go to grad school in sports management, and then you can figure out what you want to do from there." So I ended up at Ball State, got a graduate assistantship at Ball State, and came out to Indiana. My wife had family here in Indy. Her mom was born and raised at 42nd and Guilford, so right down the street from the fairgrounds. And so we said, why not? It makes all the sense. It's somewhere that she had some support. And so we started off there in Muncie and worked and did my grad work there at Ball State, and then came to Indy and was really kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But I got a temporary job at the Indiana Basketball Academy, opening that up.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And was kind of fun. But that was a temporary job. And then, I was actually thinking about going into teaching and coaching at the time, like going to high school, and teaching there, when Tom Abernathy, the owner of Indiana Basketball Academy, introduced me to Mike Fox, who ran the RCA Dome and had been in Indy a long time. And then, lo and behold, a couple weeks later, I'm starting at the RCA Dome on November 1st, the Buffalo Bills game, my first day, and I haven't looked back since.
Oh, wow. Well, you were in a great spot. I mean, to get into this business, to be, to get that graduate degree at Ball State, be close to Indianapolis, be in Indianapolis, you could almost, take advantage of things by osmosis. There's so much stuff going on here.
It was so powerful, and like I said, I didn't really know how special Indy was in terms of how they hosted events and in the sports world. I mean, I had come out here because it made sense, and it was a place that I got offered a graduate assistantship, and then that connection that Tom Abernathy made to Mike Fox. I mean, that was really what was the spark that started it all. And then I realized how powerful this community is. I mean, I started volunteering with the Sports Corp. I worked on the World Basketball Championships. I was an LOC volunteer for Allison Langton at the time. And so, years later, all of a sudden I get an opportunity to come back for the Sports Corp. And I knew what the Sports Corp could do for the community. I knew what it meant to the community. I knew, that how they harnessed the volunteers and made great things happen. And that was when I was like, oh, I can't pass this opportunity up. I mean, I want to do this because I want, we loved Indy, and opportunity to impact the community was just like, it was perfect for me.
Yeah. So you came back to Indy was it from Minneapolis?
Yes.
You were at U.S. Bank. It's U.S. Bank, right? U.S. Bank
correct.
Stadium.
Yep.
So you had a big role there.
Yep. I was the first employee hired to open and manage the brand new Viking Stadium, U.S. Bank Stadium that was being built. I was there for the last 18 months of construction, and then hired the team up, booked events, set all the policies, procedures, everything like that, and then ran it for the first 3 years. We hosted the Super Bowl in 2018, which I know is a sore point with a lot of Indy folks because that was the year that they were bidding on as well.
Yep.
So did that, and then hosted the 2019 Final Four. And that was really right after that was when I got introduced to Ryan Vaughn, who had been up to Minneapolis watching the Final Four. And we bumped into each other through common acquaintances. And then he reached back out and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a chief operating officer. What do you think?" And then, all of a sudden, about 4 months later, I'm packing the car and heading back to Indy. And my wife and I had always said, we loved Indy. Of all of our stops, Indy and Phoenix were our two favorite, and Indy felt like home. It felt like we belonged. And when that opportunity came, it didn't take much for us to think about, we want to come back to Indy. And so we're Hoosiers by choice. Yeah.
As you look to the future, Patrick, in terms of events, everybody's always wondering, what's next for Indianapolis. Realistically, is another Super Bowl possible? I mean, it's such an undertaking just to bid for it, let alone get it. Is it in the cards? Do you think it's something that Indy will go after?
Well, I always tell people whenever they ask me this question, I always say never, because I do think that if we decide that we want to do it, I think we have the will as a community to be able to do anything we want to do. What I will say is, though, one, everyone I've talked to, even in 2018 when I was hosting the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, people still talk about the 2012 Super Bowl and how it was the best Super Bowl ever. So I'm not sure that we be able to top the best Super Bowl ever. So that makes me a little nervous about trying to do that. You only have one place to go, which is down, which I don't want to do. And then the other thing is that the price tag has gotten so big. I mean, I remember in Minneapolis, we raised over $50 million. And I didn't do that, but other folks did. And that's a lot of money to fundraise to host a Super Bowl. We could do a lot of events and have a lot of impact for not as much money as that. Now, Super Bowls are trajectory changing. They're generational. I think that Indy did it at the right time. I think it has put us on it was part of our overall sports landscape. It goes into the same breadth as the Pan American Games. And now I think it's the Pan American Games, it's the Super Bowl, and it's the Olympic swimming trials. I mean, I think you can, talk about those three events as things that change the sports, strategy scene for Indy overall.
Are there other events out there, big events going forward or initiatives? I know the Sports Corporation and others really been focused on sports and technology and innovation and entrepreneur, a lot of things there in the sweet spot of Indianapolis. But as you look at what might be next out there, what is it?
Yeah, one, we were able to announce right out on Monday, right after swimming trials, we were able to announce one of those that we were very focused on, which is WrestleMania. And we also got two others with that. The draft obviously is one that we're very focused on. I think Indy, like you said, Indy is a perfect place for it. So we're very focused on that as well. There are other events that we keep an eye on. I always talk about this big funnel, and we throw everything into the funnel and we evaluate them. But the Rugby World Cup is coming in 2031 and 2033, men's in 2031 and women's in 2033. And, why now people don't think rugby's mainstream. Soccer wasn't mainstream, many years ago. And so I think it'll continue to grow. Indiana has a very strong rugby scene across the state. And so I think that's something that's out there. I think there's other events that will come that we will see. Obviously we're going to continue to bid and secure men's and women's Final Fours. Those are extremely important to us and our partners at the NCAA. So we want to continue to be great hosts for those. But, I think for us, that's why we started thinking about this 2050 vision that we're working on. And you mentioned it a little bit about the sports tech, about how do we continue to elevate Indianapolis in ways that just aren't events? How is it also that we go out and we work on, other economic development pieces that are sports that can help us, once again, separate ourselves from the other cities that all have their sports that are bidding on events and their sports focus. How do we take the package and think about Indy overall? One of the things that you mentioned was when I came to Ball State, I could almost learn from osmosis. Right. But we think we need to capitalize on that, and we need to capitalize and show other people if they want to be in sport, this is the place they want to be in. It doesn't matter if it's tech, education, law, business. You come to Indy because that's where you're going to get focus for the sport.
Fascinating story with fascinating impact over the decades since the creation of the Indiana Sports Corporation. And Patrick Talty, you're carrying on that great legacy, doing great things, not only for the sports scene, but for Indianapolis and Indiana. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I love sharing the mission of the Sports Corp and the work that the team is doing. They are passionate about making a difference in this community.
Yeah, well said. Patrick Talty, the president of the Indiana Sports Corporation, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond, presented by PNC each week. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.